So I've come to the end of the first week working on the rear roof, which I'm fairly happy with, all things considered. The weather was very kind. Only had a tiny bit of rain one day. Other than that, it was mostly sunshine, and it got quite hot at times, but I'd sooner have that than it pouring down with rain. So this is the final day that I was there, the Saturday. I tend to work Tuesdays to Saturdays. And this is during the sort of Saturday afternoon, trying to get as many batten as possible onto the roof and close it up as tightly as possible. Because obviously there's going to be a slight distance between that slight gap between the where the new roof is being put on and where the old tiles are still in place. And as I explained earlier, I decided to work on the left hand side because I had a little bit of concern about the top right hand side, the supports of the rafters, that the old rafters that are in place. And I have put those videos where I've added some new rafters to try and give it some more support, but ideally I would have preferred to put a purlin in, but I haven't got any timber on site that size that I could use. So at the moment, what I've decided to do is, when I return to the site, I'm going to continue up the left hand side right the way up, and also with that I'll be able to finish getting rid of the final chunk of ivy, which is kind of wrapped around the chimney, which you can't quite see in the picture there, sort of top middle of the picture, and get that off, because it could start interfering with the electrical cable that's coming in, the main supply, which arrives on the top of the wall and then drops down and then feeds into the building. So I managed to chop a big chunk of the rooted ivy off while it was attached to a rope, and just pull it free so that it didn't create any problems for me. And like I said, the rest of it I should be able to get as I slowly work my way up to the top there and take the final top 2 or 3 meters of tiles off the roof. I should have a free rein then of getting rid of all that old ivy, and it'd be nice to actually see the roof emptied of ivy after donkey's years of it growing there. What else to say on here? So I've ripped down some more batten earlier, which I haven't bothered filming because you've seen that before. And then I'm just trying to get the other battens in place, and where it meets in the centre there, the two battens got to meet in the centre of the whatever rafter they're against. And when I was putting on the other rafters on the other batten rather on the right hand side, because it was up against my neighbour's roof, it didn't necessarily line up where it met the 4 metre rafter in the centre of the roof. I'm hoping all this makes sense to you. So what I had to do with some of the batten was to just cut a little bit off, so that when it ended in the centre of the rafter that's there, and then I can then add on the new rafter that's going to go to the left and to the edge of the wall to close up the left hand section. I did also just sort of tack the 2 sheets of membrane a little bit further up, because I could do it from both outside and inside the loft. And although there's a little bit of wind blowing, it's nothing too treacherous, and it did hold, to allow me to not have to keep unraveling the next sheet and then putting the battens on. I was quietly pleased with myself, because I did a rough measurement of the distance of the roof, and then I used outside the front pathway is about 4.5 meters long. So I then measured between the slabs around about 4 meters, and I doubled over the membrane, and then I cut it. And then when I rolled out the first membrane, which is right at the beginning of this video, it just sat nice. It just finished on the end there, so I was quite pleased with that. And obviously the other ones, so therefore the other membrane are all going to be more or less the same size. And I like the idea that it's a continuous sheet running from left to right, and there's no joins in the sheet going up the roof, and I'll continue to do that for the entire roof. The UK membrane I bought was a metre in height. So it's a 50-metre roll and it's a metre in height. You can buy 50-metre rolls that are 1.5 metres in height, but it's just what I bought. So there's already an overlap. Normally, you overlap around about 15 centimetres each time, which is more than enough on a picture of this roof. It's unlikely you're going to get driving rain that's going to be able to force its way up and through. So you could actually, I think you can reduce it down to something like 100 millimeters or 10 centimeters or 4 inches. You can just have an overlap of that, but I prefer to play it safe and put an overlap of 15 centimeters or 150 millimeters or 6 inches. And with that, then I'm assured that there's not going to be any problems with water ingress where you've got any time of driving rain, or if you have snow sitting on the roof that slowly melts and wants to work its way up through the roof via capillary action. Capillary action is where you have two surfaces fairly close together, and water at that point defies gravity and actually will rise. So if you ever put two pieces of glass fairly close together and stick it in a bucket of water, you find the water will actually start rising up between the two panes. There you go, a little science lesson for you there. Something I learnt at grammar school back in the day. So then I suppose we could talk about how many tiles are on the roof. You can do the mental mathematics with me if you like. So it's an 8-meter run, and each tile is around about 17 centimeters wide. So that's going to give us 6 tiles per meter times by 8 meters. That's 48. So it's 48 tiles to go from one side of the roof to the other. And then I think there's 80 lengths of batten, one after the other, to get me right up to the word ridge. So 80, so if we said 80 times 50, that would be 4,000. So it's slightly less than 4,000 tiles just on this rear roof. And then we can subtract the tiles that aren't going to be used where the veluxes are going in. So I suppose in total there's something around about 3,400 tiles that need to be re-put back into position on this rear roof. And also there was a fair amount of just cleaning up. There's moss on some of the tiles. There was roots of the ivy, or fine roots, and soil on quite a lot of the tiles. And then you've got a reasonable amount of tiles that have been damaged for whatever reason by the weather, or just because, as I've explained before, sometimes but people put the tiles tightly together, thinking that it's going to be better, it's going to displace the water better, but in fact it works against you because it doesn't allow the tiles to move, and therefore you tend to find the corners and that want to crack, where you've just got the pressure between the two tiles. So when I do it, I like to leave a tiny gap, a couple of millimeters. We used to say in the north of England, we leave a bug's dick. Wouldn't be too rude, but that's how the mason that I was an apprentice to used to describe leaving gaps when we were doing stuff like paving and stuff. Because that's my trade is actually mason pavior. I'm not a roofer, I'm not a carpenter, I'm not an electrician, I'm not a plumber, I'm not a painter and decorator, I'm not a plasterer. My trade is mason pavior. Look it up. We're the last of a dying breed. And in fact, I was told at the time, I mean, I went to a grammar school, so we were meant to end up being sort of middle management. But as I was about to leave school in the beginnings of the 1980s, there was a huge recession that had gone on in the UK, and we were just told, just take whatever job you can get, essentially. And the local authority in the northwest of England offered me a position as a mason pavior as an apprentice. I didn't even know what a mason pavior was at the time. I said yes, please. And so I did a 3-year apprenticeship. Why did I get onto that? because when you look at some of the things I'm doing, I'm sure if a roofer's looking at this now, he's going to be thinking, "What on earth are you doing there? Why is he doing that?" But it's because I just work how I work. I have had the opportunity to work alongside lots of very, very good tradesmen in the various trades. Some of whom are not sadly with us, but I learned an extreme amount of interesting stuff and practical stuff, so that I could do plumbing and electrical work and whatever. I don't really like the wet trades. I don't like painting and decorating. I don't like plastering, to be honest. But other than that, I really enjoy electrical work. I think if I had my time again, I'd try and go for be an electrician. I just find it fascinating, and I like plumbing as well. The reason I like those two is that they have to be exact. So you can't. With certain things, like with the roofing, if it's not entirely square or whatever, it's not the end of the world as long as it's watertight. And there are other trades like that, but with electrical work and plumbing, it has to be right, because if it's not exact, if it's not 100%, one, with plumbing you're going to have leaks and problems like that, and two, with the electrical work, it's going to keep tripping your electrics, and that's not going to work either. So I prefer, when I'm doing something like that, to take my time. With the plumbing, I like to fit lots of isolating valves. I just find it's easy to you can often in houses you've got one valve which does everything, and that's fine and dandy if you want to shut off the entire system. But I prefer it if you can isolate sections down, so you can isolate the bathroom from the main house, you can isolate the kitchen from the main house. In the same way, really, that happens with the electrical system. It's not one continuous circuit that does everything, including your lighting. Your lighting's separate. You're in France, your rooms are separate. So if you have a problem with one particular room, you don't have a problem with all the rooms. And it's quite a good system. So getting back to the roof, cracking on, we've talked about how many tiles there are. The front roof's slightly smaller, and so it's going to be probably less than 3,000 tiles replaced on the front roof, which is good. I'll be really happy once the rear roof's done. I'm really happy with the first week's progress. Working on my own. I don't think I could have done much more. I tended to do anything from a 10 to a 12-hour day when I was working there. It doesn't leave a lot of time then for getting back to like the Airbnb, having a shower, and then more or less a quick bite to eat, and then get to bed ready for the next morning. So, but it will be worth it. It will be worth it in the end, because I'll have a lovely house finished and renovated and everything else. If you're looking at the picture now, you could possibly just see the bottom left of the roof. You can see I used some expanding foam there. That's when I put in. I found an old rafter in oak that I could use as a wall plate. It wasn't in too bad nick, and it was just around about the right size. Because I'm getting sand and cement on site for the time being, I bought 3 cans of the Roy Merlin were doing a special where you could buy 3 cans for €22. So I did that, and I used up one of the cans just to help to hold the wall plate in place. And then later on, I'll be able to do some sand and cement works around it. So that's that if you're looking at that. I'm happy as well with my trestles. Perfect. I'm thinking of when I do the front of the house, the roof starts slightly higher up. So I'm probably going to make some fresh trestles, which are going to start again practically at the beginnings of the roof height. And with that, then I'll have easy access on, and I'll have an area that I can store tiles on. At the moment, at the rear roof, I've got tiles in the garden. I've got tiles on the inside the loft, so here, there, and everywhere. So I'll be back there starting on the second week of the roof. On Tuesday, I'm talking. Currently, we're on Monday, so it's tomorrow. I'm actually setting back off to Loir-et-Cher. It just I give myself 2 days, Sunday and the Monday, to do stuff like do my laundry, do my ironing, sort out emails and stuff, and things I need to take care of, etc., etc. So then when I get back there, I can concentrate because I tend to be sort of a bit blinkered when I'm there. I don't think of anything else other than the work. So it's just like do the work, do the work, do the work. And then so 2 days a week I can chill out, and plus I kind of needed. When I came back here on Saturday evening, I was absolutely cream crackered, so I just needed to flake out on the bed, and slept through to Sunday morning. Plus, when I arrived, actually, there was no hot water in the department because the town of Puto, the sections of it, the town have organised sort of a hot water system that runs underneath all the roadways and supplies the buildings. Believe it or not, this being a very very rich part of France, Puto spends money like nobody's business. And unfortunately, this particular quarter of Puto had a leak or whatever, and the hot water had been shut off. So I ended up taking a cold shower, which was quite, which was something else because I was absolutely, I was caked in dust and everything else because I'd, I'd, I'd left the Airbnb early in the morning, 7:30 in the morning on the Saturday, gone to the house, worked right the way through till 6 in the evening, and then set off to get back to Paris. Um, so I was fairly filthy and needed a shower, and unfortunately ended up with having a cold shower. So I suppose that's not the end of the world, but I could have done without that, to be honest with you. Um, and then, bizarrely enough, but ironically enough, about 3 hours later, it came back on. But I didn't know that at the time. It could have been still been waiting now for the hot water to come on. So that was my tale of that. So yeah, I'll be back there. I'll be back on site tomorrow, which is the 13th of May. So I'm looking forward to, hopefully the weather's going to be kind again this week, and see how much further I can progress the roof. See if I can get that final bit of ivy off the roof. See if I can get up to ridge height. I won't have the roof finished this week. It's just way too much to do. But if I can get up to ridge height on the left hand side, that'd be nice. I can, like I said, I can have a topping out party, which is where you celebrate the highest part of the building that you're putting in place. I hope you found this video enjoyable. I hope it's not too long. It has been sped up a little bit to reduce it down, because what I tend to just do is put the mobile phone on a tripod and just let it run, and I'll try and edit it to a degree. So if you could perhaps answer the question: am I posting too many? Do you want to be seeing a video every day, or would you prefer just to see a couple of videos a week, or even just one video a week? Perhaps you can let me know. I don't want to be boring you with my affairs, but I do appreciate the fact that you've actually taken the time to watch an old boy crack on with an old roof on an old property. Um, it means a lot that people actually care, to be honest with you, after certain things that have gone on in my life. But anyway, that's that. Thanks ever so much, as ever, for taking the time to watch this. And if you've got any comments, any advice, anything you'd like to say, I'd love to hear from you. Take care, and I hope you have a lovely week or so, and I'll speak to you soon.